I would like to begin the rest of our session today, and our next topic is called The Long Haul, Reconnecting West and East. Now, as many Asia-Pacific destinations look towards and focusing on quality over quantity, there is a stronger focus placed on attracting travelers from long-haul markets such as the Americas and Europe. Now, this session will focus on the current trends and behaviors of travelers from these markets. Now, today we have as our moderator a destination development and tourism research professional currently working as a senior tourism specialist for the World Bank Group. We have senior private sector development specialist for tourism of the World Bank, Jessie F. McComb. Jessie.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I see we still have a few people left with us today, which is good. How is everyone doing? Good? Oh, you can do better than that. Everyone awake? Thank you. So before I introduce our panelists, this is a session about long-haul tourism. And by a show of hands, who here had to come here on a flight longer than 7 hours? All right. Oh, a lot of people. All right. So we all have some people who are recently experienced in the long-haul travel situation. So you can channel those thoughts as we're doing this session. Well, to get us started, I'd like to introduce our panelist, who is our only long-haul traveler on this panel for this, Al Merschen, who is a partner at MMGY's Global International Insights and the founder of the Sigmund Project. Please welcome Al Merschen. Second, we have Eduardo Santander, the Executive Director of the European Travel Commission, here to tell us about the European markets into Asia Pacific. And finally, we have Virginia Messina, the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Communications at the World Travel and Tourism Council. Well, oh. Little bit of musical chairs up here. Well, thank you all three for being with us. I'm very excited to have this discussion. I'd first like to start off by asking Virginia a question, particularly because as part of her role at WTTC, she focuses on the strategic priorities of sustainability and digital technology and transformation. So we've heard a lot about shifts in sustainability among the travel and tourism market. And even in this afternoon's presentation by Liz, she talked a lot about how sustainability is becoming an increasingly present consumer trend or intent. And what I'd really like to understand from your perspective is, are you seeing this intent for sustainability translating into travel purchases and actual travel decisions within the long-haul market?
Of course, and well, first of all, thank you very much, Jessie, and it's great to be here today with the PATA community along my distinguished panelists. So, as you say, sustainability has actually taken a whole different meaning post-pandemic, and I think what we're seeing is both policymakers, but of course consumers as well, taking things more seriously. At WTTC, we have most certainly put this at the core of everything we do. And there's a number of initiatives that we have launched over the last couple of years, and actually some really interesting ones coming up in our next global summit in Riyadh that we hope you're all able to join us there. So in terms of, I think you make a really good point about the transition that needs to happen between sort of intent
and that sort of materializing. So what we are seeing in terms of consumer is obviously great news that long haul is coming back, and I think Asia Pacific has huge opportunity. So in our last conference in Manila that has been referenced by Raki and others, we launched a forecast for the sector. And we know that travel and tourism will continue to grow according to our data, and I know this sounds very positive, but obviously it's down to everyone in this room and in the industry to make sure that this is happening. It's nearly 5.8% average annual growth for the industry global over the next decade. And Asia Pacific actually surpasses that growth. So according to our data, Asia Pacific will be the fastest growing region over the next 10 years. So I hope all the ministers here, I'm sure, will be sort of fighting to get some of those travelers. But so the point is, when it comes to sustainability, of course, a lot more needs to be done. What we have seen, for example, for one of our members, Trip.com, obviously based in China, one of the most critical markets, about 75% of consumers, I think, are willing to consider paying for sustainable choices. But actually, to date, only about 12% of travelers actually do so. So of course, there's a big gap there. I'll leave it.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. Really trying to measure and quantify that gap, I think, can be quite powerful, as it gives us an indicator to be able to track how we can improve on this and make progress towards changing that intent into an actual travel purchase. Eduardo, I'd love to get your thoughts on the same question. What are you seeing coming out of the European markets particularly?
Well, let me start thanking also the organizers, PATA, and I come from a family who always tell the first thing is to show gratitude for being here, and I'm delighted to be with all of you. Well, sustainability, we know it's a very buzzy word. It's in every single speech that we've heard today. It's in every title of every conference and so on. But the question at glance is, what do we want to sustain? Do we want to sustain an obsolete model that we know it's not working any longer in the medium and long term? We are crashing against a wall. Or do we want to sustain something new, something regenerative, something transformative? At the European level, we have decided already that we're going to go that way. Europe, as you know, is the most visited region worldwide, with approximately 500 million people in a normal year visiting Europe. But the question that we ask ourselves is, do we want to be the first in arrivals, first in expenditures? No, we want to be the best. And then we have to define what does it mean to be the best. Who are you comparing you with? Trends that we've seen and are very obvious to you is that the search is for Europe, coming from the United States in particular, but also from open Asian source market, is all about nature, it's all about outdoors. It's a lot of lesser-known destinations, which, by the way, has been one of our main targets for so many years, to promote a lesser-known Europe. Everybody knows already, London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Madrid, if you want. But, we are seeing a lot of searches into places like Albania, places like even lesser-known regions in famous destinations as Spain or Italy, where people never used to go. And you see people are seeking for something else. They are somehow sick of the normal offer. What I want to say with that, is that we have to commit to educate both demand, as we are doing now, preaching and saying what we have to do, but also to the supply, because the supply is struggling now. Okay, I want to sell something that is profitable, of course. We need to make profit to sell something. But on the other side, it has to be attractive enough to generate that problem that we have, is the incentive gap that we still have with the end consumer. People don't feel like they have to book something sustainable yet. Maybe some people like you and me maybe will have a look. And we were talking about Alan, Virginia, and myself before that, what did you do to be more sustainable to come to Ras Al Khaimah? But, the mainstream traveler doesn't make this exercise yet. And it has to be done by the supply chain, stop offering something that is mass, because mass tourism provokes also that low-quality tourism, degradation of the environment, and also it creates also low-quality jobs. Because while tourism, it's great employer, and it alleviates poverty, and it creates so much value for communities. It's not equal the value that we create in some places compared to others. It's not the same to create a job in tourism in Italy or in France compared to a tourism job in Cambodia or in the UAE. And this is what we have to calibrate. And for that, we have decided to start monitoring and evaluating scientifically. You know, it's the famous new KPIs of tourism that go beyond, you know, what we can measure ourselves. We have to work with the energy industry, we have to work with agro industry. There's an array of multidisciplinary sectors that we have to talk with.
Thank you very much. I think that's so important, really being able to measure sustainability and progress towards sustainability. I think another really important topic that just came out in your conversation and your comments is this idea of quality over quantity, and really considering what types of tourism destinations want to build. So in the session before the break, we heard from the governments, from ministries, from national tourism organizations, very much from the destination side about the concept of over-tourism or the concept of developing new markets. And what I'd really love to hear, and maybe we'll start with Al, is what about this from the demand side, from the market side? What specific market segments could destinations be going after in the European and American markets, particularly these long-haul markets? And how should destinations be targeting them effectively to really help build this new phase of tourism?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for being on the panel and part of the PATA family too. I think without a question, this is the best opportunity to have this clean sheet of paper to say, what do we want, who do we want as a client, how long do we want them as a client? I think one of the things, especially out of the US, people want to be more quote unquote sustainable. They don't know how. They don't know what to look for. They say it, they're willing to pay, our latest research said they're willing to pay $100 more for a flight to achieve this, but they don't have the opportunity because most of the product out there whispers that they're sustainable, and they need to shout it. It needs to be on the first page of their website. I think one of the things that we'd love to see tourist boards do is forget about arrivals. Absolutely, positively forget about arrivals. Now's the absolute best time to think about length of stay. And for so many reasons. First of all, economies of scale. You will make more money if they stay longer. Sustainability, they're taking up one seat and staying 10 days. The dispersal around the country, especially getting out of the city, all those things add up very quickly to a simple argument that says we don't need to increase arrivals by 10%. We need to increase the length of stay by 10 to 12%, and guaranteed, because it's been proven time and time again, the profit margin is exponentially higher, and B, more of the money ends up in the destination. On those short trips when someone says, the consumer just paid $1,000 to come to our destination, only when they look deep do they realize actually $400 ended up in the country. It was all taken between the airlines and the distribution channels and everything else. Every day that they stay brings more money into the market to the people who need it through dispersal without the destination. So it's a prime opportunity to take advantage of that.
Thank you so much. And I'd also like to turn this question to Eduardo as well, particularly from a European market perspective. What are those market segments, right? You know, trying to dig down deeper a little bit than just source market, that some of the Asia-Pacific destinations might be able to target to be able to achieve this idea of quality over quantity arrivals?
Well, when we talk in Europe and beyond, I mean, we've heard it from many other destinations in the Pacific Asian region too, is that the change of paradigm has to do with that, you know, to shift from a geographic mindset, you know, to a more passions-driven, you know, it's like a psychological, if you want, you know, it says, who are you targeting? Are you targeting only, you know, the Chinese market, only the Southeast Asian market, the American market? Who are the market? You know, the market are people with different wishes, different family settings, you know, different individuals. So the European Travel Commission started back in 2019 a strategy which is called Horizon 2022, which is finishing now, but it's continuing with a new one until 2030, which shifts from that geographical point of view to a passions-driven marketing. And we've done actually with MMGY a lot of research and a lot of marketing campaigns in the American market, which by the way is the most important long-haul market for Europe still. And that demonstrates that you don't have to go to America just with the sake because there are many and they have money to spend, the dollar is strong. That's not the point for them to come to Europe. They come to Europe because they are passionate about something. And this is where you have to define what your topic is. Europe standing as a cultural destination or as a rich in architecture jewels or golf or whatever you want to, or UNESCO heritage sites, you name them. And then target your global audience, not only the ones. And then something that we should not forget is that European tourism runs on aviation. So that means that as long as transportation, like air transport, continues to have problems, we will still have problems. So we have to cooperate instead of pointing at them and saying, guys, you are not developing new routes, you're not helping out, you're delivering bad results. The destination is not thriving because you're not bringing people. We have to help, and actually, I'm an advocate of supporting airlines, even financially, for their transition, because we are not going to be able to move, by car long haul, or I don't know what they have to be invented in the next decades. But I think the sustainable aviation fuels, have to be on the front row of policy change.
Excellent, thank you. One of the things I saw in both Al and Eduardo's comments was this idea of having good data, good understanding of the market, good understanding of the indicators and how we can measure them. Virginia, I wonder if you can talk about some of the tools that might be available for destinations and for governments to be able to really understand the economic impact of tourism in their country.
Absolutely, and I mean, WTTC for more than 30 years now has been actually measuring the economic impact of travel and tourism across 185 countries. But when we started talking about sustainability, and it was back in 2019, we launched this ambition to be carbon neutral by 2050. And then we really started thinking, is this feasible? Is our sector going to be able to achieve the 1.5 degrees target from the Paris Agreement? And we well should, right? So what is it that we need to put in place? And one of the biggest gaps is data, and it's 100%, we can't manage what we can't measure, no? I think we know that. So one of the tasks we have undertaken is building on our economic data. We will now be able to have some really detailed environmental indicators looking at travel and tourism's carbon footprint, so all greenhouse emission, but also the resources like water, like coal, like gas that we all depend on. And so we want to really look at what that looks like over time, because there are obviously some estimations out there, but they have been like once in, and they can't necessarily be updated. So we will now, I mean, this is one of the things we're hoping to launch in Riyadh next month. And we will also be looking at the social side of things, because of course sustainability absolutely should include the people aspect, which of course has also been mentioned today, all the importance and the impact of the communities, but how do we measure that? So we'll be able to look a bit more in detail at that social impact and obviously all the opportunities that our sector is providing in some of these communities.
Excellent, thank you so much. I wonder if I could pass this question also to Al, who is immersed in the world of global insights, right? Which it's more than just data, right? Data are just the numbers, insights are the so what. And I wonder if you could share maybe some of the tools destinations could use.
Sure, and I think, and I want to tie that back into the marketing too. We look at the US, 330 million people. Well, the reality is most of us are geographically challenged, and they're not going to be our primary market, right? We're down to now, because of post-COVID, our passport ownership has actually slipped to about 35, 36% from a high of 45%. So now, using some of that data, how do we get to the audience that we really want? And our research when it comes to sustainability talks about either a high-end market or a younger audience. And so those are the ones who are most interested and willing to pay more money for this type of thing. I think the other thing goes back to, once again, to education. As you were saying, how do we measure these things? And I think some of our research has showed, how do people think they can be more sustainable. And as you point out, it's not just about the environment. The vast majority were happy to shop local. And interestingly, and this is another great opportunity that COVID has brought us, 68% said if it helped with sustainability, they would travel during traditional off-season. So this is a really easy way to measure, or not, once again, another way to extend length of stay, but to say, okay, now we're doing several things at once, economically, sustainability, and hoping to help the destination at the same time. So I think, once again, the challenge is rethink the word seasonality. We need to get that out of our system, especially with the blended travel when people are working, are going to school, or doing whatever else while they're traveling. This whole idea of seasonality should be put aside, and we should start with a blank sheet of paper and say, when's the best time for me to get the optimum vacation and spend the longest time in that destination? One other just push for length of stay. Now I think, especially from the Americans, they don't necessarily want to go to 2 to 3 countries because they're concerned, what if the rules change between country A and country B? So then it's up to the destinations to say, we have enough in the UAE that you can enjoy a great variety over 10, 12, 14, 15 days. And forget about this, we have an average 3.5 nights. Really readjust from seasonality from everything else too.
Excellent, thank you so much. It's very interesting to hear you talk about some of the other small trends, or maybe not small, but trends that are emerging, blended purpose of visits. People look maybe at more outdoor experiences or nature-based experiences. And so, Eduardo, this question is for you to start with. What are some of these other trends that you're seeing? We heard from Liz this morning about increased length of stay, digital adoption, maybe things like direct booking, more interest in outdoor experiences or adventure tourism. Do you see these trends continuing to play out in the European market? Do you think they'll last? Or are there other trends that you think we really need to highlight to our Asia-Pacific destinations?
Yeah, research is showing that, the trend is that people are showing a lot of interest, for sustainable issues, but they cannot convert, they cannot translate that into actions. And this is where, I think the industry has to respond, with, solutions. We say out of our latest research, and I have here the number, I don't want to bore you with my numbers, 28% of American travelers, are interested in considering a sustainable holiday. However, the biggest but there is that, they don't know how to find them, or, they think that the offer is not wide enough or, attractive enough, something very niche, like an eco lodge somewhere middle in the jungle. Well, I'm not, I don't like mosquitoes or something, so I'm not gonna go there, what I want to be sustainable still, maybe coming to a, well-renowned destination. Another trend that we know is that, in this festival of crisis that we have these days, there is a lot of worried about, your personal disposable income. This is the latest research here on Asian and American shows that despite all the new trends and so on, people are very worrisome or worried about how they're going to spend every single cent that they have in the pocket for holidays. And, having said that, and I love that Alan mentioned the issue of seasonality, because this has nothing to do. We only have to change policies here. In Europe, we have the bad tradition to have the school holidays at the same time all over Europe. That provokes congestion, and believe it or not, 96% of European destinations suffer seasonality, practically all of them. The rest are just urban, mega cities like Paris, and they're always London, they always have people, no? But if you think about it, this is just a policy. You only have to change. I come from a country, in Spain, the summer begins, or where I come from in Spain, in the south, the summer begins in May and ends, it's still summer there if you want. So why should kids have to just break only, between July and August and obligate their parents to take their holidays in July and August when we could spread holidays? You see, so this is not a big change. We don't have to create engineering of that. It's a matter of policy, better governance, and of course, agreement. And this is, sorry, I promise to be controversial. This is where there is a lot of fragmentation when it comes to this kind of very strong policy that will make a big change without having to change the world, really. You have to just change some bad habits that we have. The biggest exodus that we have north to south in summer in Europe, or now in the winter, everybody going to Asia, seeking for the sun seekers. This can be reversed now with the whole liberalization of, working forms, working attitudes, like people are not so fixed in places. Nomads or no nomads, for me, is just a word, it's just, you can really now decide how you are going to work or where you are going to work, Not everybody, by the way, because my dad always says, you belong to the laptop elite, that, a nurse or a doctor or, have to go back to work even after a holiday, Anyway, back to my point, the trend is that money matters. And here is where we have to be careful, because we are, and yesterday in the meeting in Riyadh, it was told that the biggest concern for the really important people in the economy and in finances is that we're heading very difficult times, with regards to debt, with regards to inflation, recession, and so on. And this is going to affect us badly. So we better prepare. We better prepare with, more resilient products, things that work. If you're going to do some experiments, you have to do with something that it's going to deliver.
Thank you. I really like this idea that you bring up about what are some simple policy changes that destinations can make or outbound markets can make to be able to help spread the tourism flow of tourism out or make other changes. And Virginia, you work a lot in advocacy and policy and research, and I'm wondering what other types of maybe small policy changes destinations could implement to really help develop that higher quality tourism market and tourism destination.
Well, I think an interesting one that has already been mentioned earlier is the so-called workation or bleisure, right? But we did see just after the pandemic, or as we were emerging from it, how governments were, and companies, of course, were implementing policies to allow their employees to work from any location around the world. I have a friend that works for Airbnb, and I think they get to work from any Airbnb in the world for 30 days, So, and there's so many examples. There's places in the Caribbean. So, and back to Al's great point around length of stay. I think one of the biggest trends that we are seeing is that length of stay is increasing. So in average, for example, in Asia Pacific, it used to be around 12 nights, and now it can go up to 30 nights. And it's precisely because of those policy changes, including from the private sector, that are allowing people to combine work and pleasure and leisure, of course. So I think there's a number of examples. I think there's a lot that, destinations like RAS, where we're sitting today, and so many others. The UAE, I think, was also mentioned earlier, how they were really reopening their borders. And I think what we see from consumers is obviously wanting to travel sustainably. The outdoor was a trend that sort of started and was really strong at the beginning of the pandemic. I think now is shifting to city travel. I think that it's perhaps less important because people are willing to travel, and luxury is definitely something that we're also seeing is coming back and quite strong. So I don't want to, I think Eduardo makes a really good point. We're living challenging times, but what we are seeing is actually the pent-up demand is there, and people want to travel, which is great news. And we're also seeing premium travel coming back stronger. For example, the business cabins as opposed to the economy cabins in some parts of the world, including Asia Pacific. So, yeah.
If I can add just one thing to that, one of the things I think the tourist boards, the DMOs need to work on is more collaboration with the product in the marketplace. It's too disjointed now. And if you're going to go to a market and say, come here for 12, 14 days, the hotels need to know what the product is on the street and vice versa, and they need to collaborate. One of the best things about COVID was this openness to collaboration that wasn't there before. And I think this helps emphasize the interdependence of tourism on other products. If all the street activities go, the hotel doesn't have a reason for me to stay for 5 days. But if I do a chocolate class one night, a rickshaw thing the other night, something else the other night. Now I have a reason to stay, and maybe in my mind I'm extending my length of stay even more, and I'm spreading the wealth with all the players which co-support everything that we're trying to achieve in this market.
Excellent. I really love that idea. I'm very passionate about MSME development, and this is exactly why. They are the core of the destination offer. So we have just less than a minute, and I'm going to borrow from Anita and give you all 10 seconds and one word of advice for how destinations in Asia Pacific can better attract these high-quality long-haul markets. Al, I'll start with you.
Stop thinking like a government and start thinking like a business. And start thinking about what we call the life value of a consumer. Deliver great, and they'll come back over and over again.
Excellent. Virginia?
I would say inclusion, because we talk about the importance of people and hospitality, and this is a region that is so precious and so at the center of it. So it's really, really for tourists to be able to appreciate how these communities are benefiting from travel.
Excellent. And our last word from Eduardo.
Very quick, 8 things. First, certify and monitor scientifically. We've talked about new KPIs. Cultivate the workforce. Not only retain it, take care of them, treat them well. Educate them to stay and to love what they are doing. 3, prioritize communities and of course align with visitors. Those communities. Best places to live are best places to visit too. People want to feel like a local when they see that the local are happy. 4, protect nature and heritage. We know without resources, you don't have anything to offer. 5, produce and consume responsibly. We all have a little say, and every little action matters. 6, calibrate infrastructure. You have to change, your paradigm of what you have and what you need to get to move on into the new tourism in the future. 7, govern effectively new policies, and last, embed resilience in every action that you are going to be thinking about.
Excellent. Well said. Well, thank you very much to all 3 of our panelists. Thank you so much to Pata and to our host here in Ras Al Khamid. And I very much look forward to continuing this conversation later today.